I'm Mike Harrell, and today we're going to talk to Sam Chandler, and he's out of Oregon, out of Bend, Oregon, and I'm a moderator on Spiritual Sasquatch, the best group. Although there's only about 12 of us in there, it's the best group on Facebook, and he left this incredible story of something that happened to him, and we're going to get to that and after he kind of tells us his background. So how you doing, Sam?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. So what we were just before I started recording, you were getting into like you started your whole Sasquatch uh what do they call it? Epic journey in like 1984 or something like that.
Yeah, it was 1985.
1985. Why don't you start from there and just let it roll, and I'll put you as a main speaker.
Okay. Um, well, when I was 8 in 1985, we moved to a new house, and my parents and my neighbors in the new house, they became friends like instantly. And they had a cabin in Canada. And so the following summer, they invited us to this cabin. And so we drove up. I was living in the Washington, D.C. area at the time. So when I drove to Canada, it was like about a 10, 12-hour drive from our house, not too far. So we went up there a couple times a year. But so we started going up there in the summer of 1985. And pretty much like right away, just weird things, things we couldn't put our finger on, but we always just kind of like shrugged our shoulders and went about our business. Um, I mean, just for years, what happened, I had no idea about Sasquatch. Like I knew about them, but I didn't ever think that they would be on the East Coast or the eastern side of the country. I always thought they were like an Oregon, Washington thing. So we didn't know what it was. Like I see lights and orbs in the woods, in the forest. This was on 5,000 acres of private land, so there's nobody around. I mean, this is completely remote. It's about a 2-hour drive from the nearest town. So when you're there, it's just it's just whoever you're with. But we would see lights and orbs, lights coming out of the sky, just weird things like that. And then at night, when we'd sleep, we'd hear like cabin would get slapped really loud, or just howling and screaming, and there was just a bunch of stuff. I mean, it was going on for years. We never really understood what it was. We'd be out fishing and in the boat next to the shoreline, and then something from the shoreline would just start screaming at us, and we thought it was just wolves or just things that we didn't know about, because we're from the city. We started going here, and we don't really know a whole lot about the wild forests of Canada. So anyways, so for years, all this stuff would happen. We didn't really know what it was. My dad had more of like the spiritual. He would see spirits more than I would. And I would just feel stuff. Like I'm more of a feeler. He's more of a seer. And there's just certain parts of the forest there when you're going out hiking around. I mean, like you'd literally stop and you would just get that. There's a very malevolent feeling in some of the places of this forest. And it would just stop you and tell you like, don't go any further. You'd be like, okay, I got it. And you just turn around and walk away. So anyways, that went on for like years. And then in 2012, I was like determined to get past this fear that I had of this place. Because it would just irritate me, like at night, when it got dark, you just got this uneasy feeling. And I never really understood what it was from, but I would always get like pictures in my head of like half man, half wolf things. And when I was a child, I didn't know what that was. I just thought it was my imagination, and it would always freak me out. Like now that I'm older, I kind of feel like there's a dog man presence there. And
Well,
I
let me
think
let
that,
me interrupt you here. When you were having these dreams, is while you were up on the property, or this is when you're back home?
no, this is while I was there.
Okay, well, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of Dogman too, so they're part of the
Yeah.
mix.
Yeah, and I've had interactions since then with them. So, but you know, back then as a kid, that's like the scariest thing you could ever think of, especially when you're in the middle of the forest, you know. But so 2012, I was on a quest to like push through this. You know, I wasn't going to let this affect my psyche anymore. So one night after dinner, I took a boat and I went out to one of the far islands on the lake. The lake's about a mile and a half long and about half a mile wide. So I took a boat, went out to the furthest island away from the cabin, back in an area where I've always heard screams and howls and stuff. So I set up my little camp, strung a hammock out. This was in October of 2012, so it was cold that night. It was in the 20s. And got my sleeping bag, got my hammock set up, and turned on my light. And I laid there in my hammock, and I heard like the wolves were howling on the north side of the lake and the south side of the lake. There's two different groups of wolves. So I was laying there listening to them, and on the north shore behind me, on the shoreline behind me, a tree fell. And I was like, okay, you know, like something's there. And at this point, I had kind of started to wonder about Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever. So I kind of had a feeling when that tree fell, it was like this thing was like, okay, you know, something's there, something's going to happen tonight. I'm like, cool. So I laid there and I fell asleep, and I woke up, and I'm not sure what time it was because I don't use like clocks or watches out there. And I felt, so I'm laying in my hammock north to south. My head's facing north, my feet are facing south, and I just, like, it felt like a finger was touching my right on my crown chakra part of my skull. And then all of a sudden this energy rush, just like from my head to my feet, back out of my head. And it was just like this boom. And there was a message, and it said, "Get out of here." And I was like, okay. I mean, like, just calm down. It's just your imagination. And so I laid there and I calmed myself down, and it hit me again, but harder this time. Boom. I mean, like, my whole body got hot, tingly, freezing cold, but hot at the same time. And it was the same message, but more intense. And it said, "Get out of here now." And I was like, all right, you know, just breathe, calm down. We can push through this. You know, we can do this. As what you're here for. And then it hit me hard. And I mean, just like hard, same thing right here. And it said, "Get out of here now, or you're going to die." And I was like, okay, that was intense. And then, so I had this like two-way radio in the pouch of my hammock, and it started going, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go. So I hopped up, I left my hammock, left my sleeping bag. I ran to the boat, hopped in the boat, took off to the cabin. And so on that ride to the cabin, it was about 20 minutes in the boat. And it was just a clear sky with the moon. And I felt like that's the most vulnerable I've ever felt in my life. I felt like something was about to reach down and pluck me up and take me away. And I was got back to the cabin, jumped in my bed, and went to sleep. And so that was like my eye-opening awakening, I guess. I
Well,
don't really
I'd
know.
like to interject that this,
Yeah.
because I've had initiations into yoga, and I've had initiation into a heart light meditation from the Sasquatch. And when you have that energy coming from the top of your head, going down, that is really powerful, strong spiritual energy. Your life
Yeah,
changes after that. The
absolutely.
furniture inside you kind of moves around, and stuff
Absolutely.
stuff's not the same, and it's not the same hometown boy anymore.
No, it changed my life. Absolutely. And
Just want to add that in there because I've had those kind of experiences, and when people just hear it, they don't get it. But your
no,
whole life changes, and it's not like that. But over time, it's like everything's different.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've heard DNA activation, Kundalini awakening was the thing that I related to most by how it felt to me. Just that it's so hard to describe without actually like feeling it, you know. It just like just talking about it makes me like jittery, you know, just how powerful that was. But it absolutely changed my life. I mean, that was my triggering of everything since then.
Oh, I'm getting chills from that. Did you have any hint? Because it's a feeling, right? But did you have any hint of what species, what type of being, or where it was coming from? Because you may not know because this is invisible. This stuff's happening invisibly.
Right. And that's the thing. I don't the tree falling behind me uh gave me a hint as to who it might be, you know. Since then things have happened where I kind of I feel like it was Sasquatch warning me. But it also could have been uh it could have been a dog man. I'm not real sure. I don't feel like it was a UFO entity, or I mean you know, like a star person or anything like that. But I feel like they could have been involved from the warning part, because I've seen um, UFO stuff up there before. Don't understand it. More like light ships, nothing physical, like a metal sphere or anything like that. It's more of like a light ship, or just a light coming out of absolutely nothing in the sky, like a spotlight coming out of the sky. Nothing there. It
Well,
was coming through.
the star people, those light orbs, the light ships, they're part of the mix. They're right in there. Dog man, star people,
Right,
Sasquatch, and then the others. It's all part of the mix now.
right, totally. And I've learned this now, but at the time, you know, it's so when you're not familiar with any of this stuff, and you're like, what? But there's a malevolent element to this area. It's not all the time, but there's just certain places that, and I've experienced this since then with them. Like I get that message in my head. Um, Stop, don't go any further. You know, like if I'll go on a hike and I'll come to like a thicket of cedar trees, and there's just like this thing stops me. Don't go in there. Turn around. You know, and like to the point where they've actually like where I've walked a certain direction around it and then ended up in a totally other area. It's almost like they like take me like a little toy and turn me and put me over here, you know, just like out of harm's way type of situation.
Was that just like a wandering around and finding yourself in another place, or did you actually feel like you skipped the actual walking part and found yourself in another place? Because
Oh no, I've
both the
walked.
Sasquatch and the star people can do that. They can just move you from one place to another,
Right.
and,
Well,
and you're
it's
looking
kind of
around saying, "How did I get here?"
it was kind of both. Just I'll make it like it's a long story, but I'll make it kind of quick. There's a lake, a little like we call it Lost Lake, but it's like over a ridge line on the property. But it's like it's about 45-minute hike. So sometimes I like to go there by myself and just relax and kind of meditate or whatever. So one morning I got up early. You got to take the boat across a cove to the other shoreline on the south shore. So I got there, I started walking to the lake, and I came to a cedar thicket, and it was real dark in there. And I got that message like, don't go in there, because I usually walk through it. And I said, okay. So I stopped and I went to go walk around it. And I walked around it and I kept walking. And the feeling went away, that bad feeling. And so I'm walking and I keep going and I come over the ridge and I come down and I can see the lake in the distance through the trees, you know. So I start walking towards it and I get to the shoreline. And I get to the shoreline and it's not the lake that I was walking to. I'm like, this lake is way bigger. I don't know where the hell I am. And I start trying to figure out where I am, and I'm looking and I'm like, I'm on I'm back at the main lake. I'm back at the lake, you know, like the one the cabin's on. But I'm like way down shore, like halfway down that lake. No idea how I got there. I was walking southeast and I ended up northwest. So no idea how that happened. But I feel like that was another thing where they kind of, took me out of harm's way and put me somewhere else.
Or you were actually taken on a craft, and you got a little tune up or something, and they tried to put you back basically at the same time, but maybe in a different location. That story is very, very common with the star people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but doesn't matter. I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. So it's just a mystery.
I
but
know.
also Sasquatch people have done it, but it's more common, that story of walking or driving and then ended up 10 miles ahead or a few miles away.
Right. But since then, I've I moved to Georgia. I lived in a bunch of places since then, like since I first started going there. So between 1985 and now, I moved a bunch. I lived in a bunch of different cities and experiences, but I always went back to Canada. That was always my grounding place. No matter where I lived, still to this day, I go there. So when I moved to Georgia, I was living in Georgia in 2012 when that happened, when that thing on the island happened. So just being in Georgia, and I get back after that trip, and I'm like, I got to look into this more. So I started going out around, Georgia, and it just snowballed, just finding places and just kind of hoping. But it was almost like, and I've come to realize this now, but like, we're guided to these places. So you think you might show up at a place and it's like, oh wow, they're here, that's cool, but it's like we're pushed in these directions. Nothing's like a coincidence. So I started going to these places around my house, like not far from my house, like 15 minutes, like 15 miles maybe. And things started happening there too, and I'm like, this is insane. Like how have I not noticed any of this before? And so that's when it really snowballed, was being in Georgia. And you're in a great place, man, because that's a very underestimated area. Like that whole state, especially the northern half of it, is man, there's a lot going on there.
All right, now I already got stories, and they're already coming. I'm inside the city of Savannah city limits, and they're already coming to my house. I mean, they throw rocks on
Yeah.
my roof, and they left me a pear one day because of they felt sorry for me because I didn't get any loquats off this tree. It just goes on and on. It's stick lifts in the front yard.
Yep.
So they're here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what so when I came back from that trip, I started going to this place, and I ride mountain bikes. So I went on a bike ride one day at a place. It was about 12 miles from my house at the time. So I'm riding my mountain bike through this park, and it's a park that's open during the day, but it's closed at night, and it's surrounded by private property, a lot of farms and stuff around it. So it's like a perfect place for them, and there's tons of deer and tons of hogs and stuff. So I'm riding my bike down this trail. I get about 6 miles back into this area, cross over some power lines, like a power line clearing, and get into another area. And like as soon as I cross those power lines and get into this area, it was like you just felt it. The energy felt totally different. Not scary, but just like intense. Like you can just feel it. And I was like, wow, this place is a totally different feel to it. So I, keep going. I stop for a minute to get a drink, and I hear like footsteps in the leaf litter. And I'm like looking around, I don't see anything. So I'm like, well, that's weird. So I get on my bike and I leave. And like a week later, my wife and my kids, we were like, we should go on a hike. And in my head, I'm like, I never said anything to them about them, but in my head, I'm like, we should go to this place because I just want like reassurance that it's not my imagination. So we went on a hike that day, and we walked back there. And we get back there, and we walk, through the power line clearing. We get in there, and we're walking, and my wife, me and my oldest son were a little bit ahead, and my wife and my youngest son were behind us. And she's like, "Hey, babe, stop." So I'm like, "Okay." So she walks up, and she's like, "There's somebody walking behind me." And I'm like, "All right, cool. So this really did happen." And I'm like, "All right, well, just walk with me. We'll be fine." And we're walking, and we walk a little bit further. She's like, "I don't like this place. It's got a weird feeling to it." And I said, "All right, just, let's just get through this." So we walk through, and then a blue jay harasses us the rest of the way. So he's like yelling at us and screaming at us. And I'm like, she's like, "Why is he just like yelling at us?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So we walk out, and that was like, from that point, I was like, this is my spot. So I kept going back and kept going back. every time I'd go back, I'd see different tree structures, new tree breaks. And so after like a few months, I that's when that story happened that I posted in the group on Facebook. So I went there one morning, and I started looking at tree structures, and I thought to myself, like, I'm just going to walk through this whole area and look at all the tree structures. So I'm walking through and I'm looking at all the new stuff. Some of them are gigantic. Some of them are like subtle, but like I just was drawn to them. And I'm just walking around complimenting them on all their tree structures, just out loud, being like, this one's awesome. I don't know how you did this, but this is really cool how you did this and this, and I really like this one. And so for like an hour, I'm just walking around complimenting them, speaking out loud. And I hear footsteps again, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then, so that's when it happened. I'm standing there, and I hear someone walking towards me, and I'm looking, and I'm like, nobody's there. And so then from, this side of me, somebody comes walking up behind me. And so I'm like, what? So I look over here, and when I look over there, somebody over here comes walking up to me. And it was like every time I looked, the person behind me would walk closer. You just hear the footsteps every time. So then I just stopped, and they stopped, and there was three of them in like a triangle, kind of flanked around me, and they were within a few feet, like 10 feet maybe. And it stopped. They got quiet. Nothing. There was no noise. Nothing. And I said, hey, how you doing? Or something to that effect. And that's when it just like hit me. Like, it was just like this instant smile on my face, like euphoric love, warmth, like a huge energy hug, crying, not sobbing, but just like smiling and tears coming out. It was just so overwhelming. Like I didn't know how to react to it. It was just my body uncontrollably was just like, and then that lasted about 30 seconds. And then just as quickly as it came, it stopped, and they turned and walked away. And there was like this message, and it was just like, you can go now, or you should go now, And I was like, okay, thank you. That was amazing. So I turned and walked back out. And I called my wife on the way back down the trail. I was like, I don't know what happened, but I was just in that place we went to, and it was just amazing. And she was like, oh, that's awesome. And she doesn't, since then she's experienced things, but at the time she didn't really, get it. And I didn't understand at the time, like, how did that happen? Like, what in the hell is going on? But just the things that I had experienced in Canada previous, like all the weird things and the strangeness, I was accepting of it, because I was like, I've seen weird things and experienced weird things my whole life in these places. So it didn't scare me. I was just like, I wanted to learn more. I was like hooked. And so I think I said a few more things to them, and I went about my business. And that night, I got home and laying in bed with my wife, and in our bedroom, we were on the second floor, and there's one window on her side of the bed that faced the woods behind our house, and my window faced our backyard. And we're laying in bed, and I hear like a tap, like a fingernail tap on her window. She was like, what is that? And I was like, I don't know. And it happened again, like tap, 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 tap. And I was like, that sounds like someone's tapping on the window. She's like, it sounds like a fingernail. And I was like, yeah, it does. And so we just went to sleep. And then almost every night for like a week, it's the same thing. They'd come to her window and tap on it. And she would roll over and look at me. She was like, I hate that. And I'd be like, it's not evil, And but it was always on her window. And so anyways, they followed me home that night, or just went with me home and started coming to our house. And that was when it started happening at our house. And so
well, that was pretty mind-blowing. My mind is blown that to get that. I call it tagging. They tagged you, and they say, we recognize you, we're going to be with you. You know what I mean? And it is it's kind of hard to put in words what it is, but when they affect you like that, open your heart, make you feel things. Uh, like some people are brought to tears by this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and some people have dropped to their knees because they've never felt like a love, kindness, energy like that before in their life.
Never.
And this is one of the things that the Sasquatch can do. They can project that. They can engulf you in that, and
Yeah.
that's like, this is the reason why I'm talking to you, because that's one side of the Sasquatch that needs to be known, that they are
Uh-huh.
also, they're animals and they're, territorial and all this stuff that everybody talks about, but they also have this side to them that is divine. It's like being in the presence of a holy man. It's
Oh,
this
yeah.
majestic, blissful, cosmic. I don't know what you call it. See, the words just don't work anymore.
Exactly. You can't. There's no words to really explain it. Yeah, it's all feeling that I've never experienced. Like I say, the closest thing I've ever experienced or could relay of something that's close to it is the birth of my sons. Like when both my sons were born, just being there when they are, they enter the world. That feeling you get of just like that's just pure love. Like there's just nothing
And
else.
it's this soul connection. When your
Right.
child looks up at you for the first time, doors open up inside of you, and then it's like that's that soul connection. That's my
Right.
son. That's this thing is like this eternal thing. And the Sasquatch can do that. I mean, uh, they can make you feel like you've known them eternally. Like you've known them for epoch after epoch, time
Right.
after time.
Right.
So people need to know this. This is not super duper rare. It happens more than is reported.
Right. And that's the thing. That's as this has progressed, I've kind of been, and I went to a conference a couple weeks ago up in Washington. Tom Cantrell put on a conference, and it was Barb Shute and some people were up there, and Keith, who you've spoken to. And while I was there, I was pushed. Like the first night we were there was people there, and they were just giving their encounters and experiences. And I'm kind of a closed, reserved person. I don't really like to open up a lot of things. And Keith was like, "You should go tell some of your stories." And I was like, "I don't know, man. I'm just not a big public speaker type person." And like, so that night, I was camping out by myself that night, and so I went to my campsite, and I was laying there by the fire, and we're just sitting there by the fire, and it was like, just like this message or download. It was like, you need to start talking more about this stuff. And I was like, okay, I get it. And then all my experiences, like instantly, as soon as that thought went to my head, like all my experiences, all my encounters, they kind of like compartmentalized and like became super clear, vivid. Like all the stuff that like the little details that don't really matter kind of were like pulled away from them. And they were like filed away in my mind. Like, remember this, remember this, remember this, remember this. And they're like, and it was just like my mind was just like defragged. It was like cleaned, if that makes any sense. So like all of this kind of became organized in a way that I'd be able to speak about it clearer, if that makes any sense. So it's like
Makes perfect sense to me, because I'm sitting here reading your thing, and 10 minutes later I'm talking to you saying, I gotta talk to you about this, because so you're getting the you need to talk about it, and I'm getting the you need to record this.
right. That's what I thought yesterday when you and I spoke. I
you
was
know
like,
and
this
the other
is
thing we have in common is people. I talked a little bit about mind speak, uh, with Robin McCrae, and I talked about it in an interview that I did the other day
right.
with
That was
Dr.
an awesome
John.
video.
Huh?
That was an awesome video.
Oh, the one with Dr. John, or the
No, with the McCrae's.
with the McCrae's. That was awesome. But
Yeah.
here's the thing: it's like if uh, the universe, the first language of the universe is feeling. It's not words. It's not mathematics. It's not geometry.
Right.
It's not energy patterns or colors. The first language of the universe is feelings.
Right.
And then comes words. So when I hear you talk about you had this feeling and you had this intuition and you had this, it's that is mind speak. You
Right.
know,
Right.
uh, remote viewing. Most people can go and study remote viewing, learn about it, watch a bunch of videos about what remote viewing is, and so I use that as an example. And the guys who do make money, and they're actually making money for giant corporations and stuff like that by remote viewing. It's a profession. It's and the military is into it. This guy was in an interview one time, and I saw him. He said, remote viewing isn't really remote, and it's not viewing. He said, what remote viewing is a feeling inside, and you stay with that feeling, and then it goes beyond time and space, and you could be remote viewing something on the moon or something under the ocean or something in another country from where you are.
Right.
And this is the thing about one of the things that I think the Sasquatch and the ET people are teaching us is that in our feelings is this connection to the all one, and it's a two-way radio. We can send and receive, and people like the Sasquatch people or the star people, they can send you messages, they can send you energy, they can give you little course corrections, or they can clear your memory like that and put everything back in order, or they can block your memory, like all that
Absolutely.
stuff. So,
Absolutely.
and that's the direction that I think the Sasquatch investigators are going to have to end up. They're going to end up there eventually.
Right. And that's the message I was given a couple weeks ago, was like you, and I don't want I don't want it to come across as like a messiah type thing, you know what I mean? But it was like this message. It was like, you need to help bridge the gap between the flesh and blood group and the woo group, like you need to help kind of pull everyone together and like help people see both sides of it, like the flesh and blood stuff is cool. I appreciate it. It's neat. And I find it interesting. Like I love audio, if I hear audio stuff, that's my thing. I like that. But if there's like a cool photo or video or footprint, you know what I mean? Like, I appreciate that type of thing, but it's so much more than that. And I feel like if anybody wants to get into this field or this journey, they have to accept what we're discussing now. Like, you just have to accept it, because that's the only way you're really going to make any progress in this. And when you start making progress in this, you start learning more about yourself more than anything. Like, you learn about yourself and about the world and life. I mean, you'll learn about the Sasquatch and ET and Dogman and everything like that as you go. But like, they're not really going to teach you anything about them until you start learning them yourself. Like, you got to figure yourself out, and then they'll be like, all right, we're at a point now where we can start teaching you about us. So I think that it just, like all these things that I've experienced, they can't be like tucked away and kept secret, because there's just people that need to hear these things because they've experienced them too, and it just helps bring people out, So that was kind of the message I was given that day. I'm still working through it. I'm still not a big public speaker person, but I think we all have a
You can
role.
be an ambassador of meaning, an ambassador of experience. People need to
Right.
hear it. They really do.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
and to me, I've been given this very clear, almost word for word, what's going on is, well, first of all, in our lifetime and before our lifetime, we had the first encounters with extraterrestrial people. We had Roswell people, and before that, in the 30s, they had something, and before that, actually,
Right.
in the 1850s, they had flying saucers in America. They wasn't flying saucers; they were people actually built craft. So this has been going on for a long time, all throughout history.
Right.
But they made their presence known, and they can see the troubles that we're in, and you know And then there's a whole series of events that happen with them being only physical, only physical, only physical. This
Right.
the craft, and sooner or later, somebody had to figure out that there's people in that craft, you know. And then people started getting taken and contacted and abducted and worked on, and then okay, and this has been a whole progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all those people, because I'm kind of connected with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters.
Okay.
That's like a scientific group that are just studying conscious contact. And I'm friends with those guys. So what they found out was that the people who've had this sometimes, and the same thing is lifetime contact and generational contact and all this kind of stuff. The people who've had this over time, their life improved, their spirituality improved, their intuition improved,
Yeah.
their love for Mother Nature improved, their connection to the earth and to the animals improved, their respect for fellow man improved,
Yeah.
their diets changed. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what the ET people. But I'm looking at this, and I'm going, I see that, because that's all documented with data points. They have big data points on all this stuff.
Right.
Then I'm looking at the Sasquatch people, and they're doing the exact same thing.
Exactly.
They're monsters. Oh, they're physical. They're only physical. That don't look for anything else. They're not woo. And then you go on and on about that. You know, here's the scat, and here's the hair sample, and here's the DNA. All right.
Yeah.
But then coming behind that is all the people who are having an experience. People have been having an experience since they're 4, since they're 8,
Right.
and then they eventually it gets to the point where, just like this, now the people, you can't even get people to be interviewed about their star connection. You know why? Because it's family to them. They've incorporated it into their being. And
Right.
so they say, well, yeah, my family is from Sirius, or my family is from Arcturus, and they're integrated into this kind of galactic understanding of creation, you know.
Yeah.
And you can see the same thing happening with the Sasquatch people. Yeah, I'm connected with this clan, and they, I feel like they're my family now, and you know, see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And this whole thing is underwritten by the each star people, because what I think that they're doing, and I'm pretty sure they actually said that the Sasquatch have said it too, that they want to make this planet into a galactic part of this galaxy of all the star people. And in order to do that, we have to raise our consciousness, become more intuitive, love the earth, love each other more, stop all that, right? And you're going to see it. This is like a 200 or 300 year process they're going on. We're already at about 100 years already.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's important what we're doing, because
totally.
it has to do with the destiny of the earth, because never before have we been an actual recognized by the Galactic Federation, or whoever those guys are.
Right.
We've always been seen as a backwater kind of planet, but
totally. Like a zoo.
we're being groomed
Yeah.
to be part of them, and in order to do that, we pretty much have to get along with very odd looking individuals, because not all the star people look like us.
Right.
So that's where the Sasquatch people are going to be the interface between, if we can get along with the Sasquatch people, and that's all working out okay, and the Sasquatch people can introduce us to the trees and the rocks and all that kind of stuff, the back to nature stuff.
Yeah.
Then we're going to be worthy of open contact, because the star people don't want to make contact with this government.
No.
They want to make contact with
yeah.
with your regular humans, and they'll have someplace out in Ohio or someplace in Canada where they're fix their ships, or they have a little study groups or something teaching people. That's what's coming.
Right.
This is epic stuff.
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, they have to ease some people into this, because you can't just come straight out with like what you just said. Because if you bring that information to like a normal person or a, you know, someone who's just going through the daily routine of what they've been taught since they were a child, you know, of just being like a good worker, you know, the American dream, you know, 9 to 5 and overtime. And like if you present that to that type of person, they're going to be like, get out of here. That's not real, you know, and they're just going to shut it down immediately. So, like from me, I was always into that type of thing. I never discounted it. Like I never said that's not real. But growing up in like as a city person, you know, like I grew up in like the punk hardcore scene in Washington D.C. and Richmond, Virginia. So like going to shows, hardcore shows, punk rock shows, skateboarding, riding bikes, you know, just living in the city, just being like going to bars at night, you know, just being a dumbass, getting in fights and just stupid stuff, you know, just living that life, just kind of oblivious to the big picture. And then whenever I would go to the cabin in Canada, it was like, oh, you know, it just like, it was like this, everything else was washed away and it was just present moment. I'm here. This is what is important to me. And it grounded me. So going to this place grounded me throughout my whole life. And that's what kept me sane, you know, like I didn't get caught up in the mess of have the nicest car, you know, just trying to live that materialistic lifestyle or anything like that. I've always been a little bit like rebellious in a way. And I think that when they did what happened to me in 2012, it was like my light switch was flipped, you know, it was like, all right, it's time for you to kind of wake up. Like we've been kind of giving you like nudges and like subtle things, but like, you're just not waking up. So we're going to give you this little zap, you know, and I don't know if this was an intentional thing or if this was just a consequence of this experience, but
Was
it
that
did.
with the three men, the three Sasquatch? That the one?
No, well, that too, I think that was a part of it, but I think the initial one was 2012 when I was on the island trying to
Right.
camp by myself, and it was that get out of here thing. And I don't know if it was an activation, like a DNA activation, Kundalini awakening on purpose, like an energy transfer, or if that just happened because of the message that they were trying to protect me. You know what I mean? I'm not real sure what happened, but it happened. And so like my thing is like I grew up a certain way. I grew up on the city person type lifestyle. And I was never really like, my dad was a Marine and my mom was a teacher. So they were very loving parents, but they weren't like, I was never raised in like that loving energy, you know, feeling of like religious going to church or anything like that. It was just like life's just life. You know what I mean? Like, this is just the way things are type thing. And so when I started looking into this more, like all that has been brought to my attention that's, you know, that is what it is, but this is not how it is in the real world. So like everything I've been taught as a child going to public schools, you know, I mean, like we're taught from day one, follow the bells, you know, like you're going to get on this schedule. This is training you to be a good worker. And everything we're going to teach you is going to train you to be a good worker. You go to college to be a good worker. So you're basically born to work, to make money, to buy things, supply the government with tax money, or, you know, the elites that run the world with your money, you know, like you're just a worker bee. And so I've had to unlearn everything and then relearn this. And we're all different. So we all have to learn in like a different way. So everyone's being taught in a different way. And this is just my way of being taught. So some people relate to it, you know, like you get it. I think our group, like spiritual Sasquatch, and like a lot of people that I've been introduced to, we all understand it. But when you talk to someone who's, you know, like flesh and blood only, they think it's all horse crap. So me being raised as a city person, I can kind of bridge the gap of like the no BS stuff with the woo stuff. You know what I mean? So like I can talk to a person who's a science person who's only flesh and blood and be like, look, man, I get it. I used to be the same way. You know, I was kind of open to it, but I would always think it was kind of like nonsense and be like, you just have to accept this stuff, man. Like, if you're going to make any progress in this, you have to accept this stuff. And like, you don't have to admit it to your friends. Like, talk crap about the woo stuff all you want to, but when you go into the woods and you're doing your investigations, like, open yourself up secretly. Keep it to yourself, but open yourself up here. And like, not here. I made the mistake of thinking it was here, but it's here. You know, you got to make this open up, and they'll come to you and they'll help you, and you're going to learn so much. And it only takes one thing to happen to change that, if you let it. And so, like, that's my thing, is I just want people to open up more to any possibility. And like you were saying a minute ago, like, mind speak is subtle. It's not a booming voice from the sky. You know, it's not like someone yelling in your ear. It's messages, it's downloads, it's just like things that pop in your head, it's ideas. It's just subtle. And if you open yourself up to those things, man, it just opens up everything, you know.
Then it's a wild ride.
Yeah, for sure. So,
well, we were just talking, this is, I feel this too, right? I look at, I think I'm kind of like a fanatic, and I don't have, but whatever. But I've watched like almost every Sasquatch video in the channels, you know, because over a few years you can just kind of keep up with them, and you watch them all. And what I know now about mind speak and intuition and heart space and all that kind of stuff is, when these people are talking, even the people who are being afraid, but the researchers are going out there and they say, oh, I feel like somebody's looking at me, or I feel like I shouldn't be in this place, or I was drawn over to this thing, and I look, and it's like, basically they're describing mind speak after mind speak after mind speak, psychic thing. All of the bugs stopped, and the frogs they all were quiet. How the hell do you think that happens to a whole forest?
Right.
That's super duper psychic impact kind of thing. The Sasquatch and maybe some other animals have too. Right. It is all the stuff that happens to them is paranormal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And a lot of people just write it off.
They write it off.
Yeah, they're just like,
yeah,
I don't know what that was, which I did as a child, you know, as a kid growing up, as a teenager. Something weird would happen. I don't know what that was. Whatever, you know, like, so yeah, I just
like you were talking about the bird that was chasing you around.
Right, the blue jay. Exactly.
That was probably no accident, you know.
100%. And at the time I didn't understand it, but looking back, I'm like, you know, that was them. And since that, and they started coming to our house, you know, after that interaction that I had with the love energy thing, they started coming to our house, and it like, looking back, I regret a lot of stuff, because they would come by the house at night and, like, you know, tap on the window or knock on the side of the house or whatever. And I knew that they were there the same way that we go to the woods to their place, you know, because we want to interact with them. They do that with us. So if they show an interest in you, they'll come to your house and they want to interact with you. It might not be an every night thing, but when they do, you know, they will come, say they come like late, and it would be like 3 a.m, and they knock on the window or tap on the door. And it's like, I get it. I don't know, I'm just tired. I don't want to come outside right now, you know? And I regret that, because I feel like that could have made a lot more progress. I mean, everything happens for a reason, but I still think it would have, like, I could have taken steps a little bit further through this. And but I think about that, and then I think about the times that I went to go visit them in their areas and nothing happened. Like, they weren't around. And I think that it's the same thing. If you go up to their area at 2 p.m, they're asleep sometimes, you know, they don't want to be bothered. So they're not going to give you anything, just like I didn't give them anything sometimes. So it's a two-way street, you know, you got to open up to them if you want them to open up to you. And so, like, one night, this is a funny story. One night, we live in the suburbs. So I want people to understand, like, this doesn't just happen in remote, like farms or remote cabins. Like this happened, like this can happen anywhere. So we lived in the suburbs. We lived at the end of a cul-de-sac where the woods were right there. And across the street was this house, and they had a tree in their front yard. And these people had this little schnauzer, and that barked all night long, man. And it drove us crazy. And it was a sweet dog. The people weren't the nicest people. But so one day it was trash night. So I rolled my trash cans down the driveway, and I put them to the side on the side of the curb. And the dog started barking. And I was like, God, this dog. So I go in the house. We hear the dog barking in our bedroom. My wife's like, we got to do something about this dog. And I'm like, all right, well, we can call animal control, and maybe they'll come talk to the people and get them to bring the dog inside. So we're laying in bed that night, and I hear a slap on the house behind my head. Boom. I'm like, okay, cool, they're here. And I'm just going to wait and see what they're doing. And then on my window, I hear a tap. Normally they tapped on my wife's window, but this night they tapped on my window. And it was tap, tap, tap. And I said, oh, wow, that's different. They're tapping on my window. And they got quiet. And then so like a minute later, I heard this loud, like crack type noise, and I was like, that sounded like a tree. I was like, something's going on outside. So I laid there thinking, well, I'll see where this goes. And I fell asleep. So I woke up the next morning and get ready for work. Totally forgot about it, So I'm getting ready for work, and I walk to my car, and I sit in my car, and I turn the car, and I look down my driveway, and my trash cans are in my driveway facing backwards, like blocking me. So I can't get out of my driveway. And I'm like, okay, all right, guys, haha. So I get out to move my trash cans out of the way, and I look across the street, and that tree that the dog was tied to was pushed over. And the dog was fine, but the tree was gone. The dog was never outside again in the front yard. They put it in the backyard. So I think that was just them being like, we got your back, And so that's like one of my favorite stories, because it just shows how.
And to interpret it, that means that they were feeling you 24 hours a day. They felt your stress of this dog and your wife and everything.
Right.
And it was something that they could take care of. And they responded to, and you didn't say a word to them. So there was basically your feelings,
Yep.
And then they responded and made damn sure you understood that they know that
Yep.
they know that what's going on inside of you and your wife and your kids, and that they will respond to it. And this is like a teaching. That's how they teach. It's playful or it's dramatic, but that's real. And it happens to a lot of people in a lot of situations, maybe not quite so dramatic as that. But I mean, I've had a tree break down the street from my house. It was the only pine tree, in my neighborhood. Big limb break. So,
right.
And it was obviously just for me.
Yeah, totally. And people take that as aggression sometimes, and it's like, that's just their way. Like they're twice as big as us. Like that's just their way of being like, hey, I'm here. They're not going to come out and be like, hey, it's me, it's me, Steve, I'm here. They break a tree branch. They might even push a tree over, but like, they're not trying to kill you. That's just their way of letting you know, like, I'm right here. Or, sometimes if you do cross a line, and which I've been guilty of this too, like you do something that they don't totally agree with, or they're not really happy with, they will do that. And it's just their way of being like, stop, don't do it anymore, or something of that sort. Or they're just not happy. Like one time we were walking through the woods, me and my wife, and my youngest son was about, I think he was about 2.5, 3. And he was just having a fit for whatever reason. He was tired. We had walked about a mile. So for him and his little legs, that was a long hike. So he was starting to throw a little temper tantrum and cry. And we were in another area that I've had encounters at that was kind of near our house. And so we thought, like, we're going to do tough love stuff with him now. And so we kept walking. But we kept him just within eyesight, you know what I mean? So when he threw himself down on the ground, it was like having a temper tantrum. I walked down the hill, but I could still see him. And then he got up and looked and didn't see us. So he got up and walked. And then when he saw us, he threw himself back down, you know, and was like, I don't like this. So when he was kind of crying, right on the top of the hill above us, a tree branch, snap. And it was just like a clear message of like, you better get that boy. And I was like, okay, all right. So I got him, you know, we walked back to the car, but that place has always had like a motherly instinct. So I feel like that was a mother being like, you know, you better get that boy. Like, I don't like hearing him cry like that. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry, you know, but like some people would take that as aggression, and that's just not, it's just, you know, people's perspective needs to change on this too. If they wanted to kill us, man, they'd kill us. Like, there wouldn't be a single person that would enter the woods and survive if that's what their intentions were. So these people that go and they're like, oh man, I'm just glad I survived. It's like, come on, you know, like, let's let the dramatics go. Like, if they wanted to kill you, they would kill you. So,
Well, you know, my experience is that I don't know about all of them, but some of them are very, very, very high beings.
mm-hmm. Right.
I'll give you one example of this. When I was in my 20s, I was like on a search for the enlightenment, right? And I was checking out the gurus and stuff, and I met enlightened people, right? So I went to go see this guy named Sri Chinmoy, who was a guru, and he was kind of well known, and you know, and I guess I was 22 or something, 21, and so we went to go see this guy, right? And I thought, okay, we're going to get to hear some discourse from the guru, right? This guy didn't say a word. He was in this sort of like an auditorium, like sort of like a civic center, right? But it was kind of like where they do graduations and stuff. So it was kind of like a movie theater, but it was a big stage. And he was sitting on that, and then they had like a little light on him, and then they brought down the house lights. And this guy was just sitting there meditating, right? And this guy's obviously a holy man. I mean, it's like he was famous, right? So what he did is he just started looking at the audience, up and down each row, looked at every single person, took his time, and I was sticking way over to his left, you know, and it was like at the end of the whole thing, and it took like about 15 or 20 minutes for him to look at everybody. I think he did the whole thing twice, so we got to do this twice. Then he came and he looked at me, right? And when he looked at me, there was light coming out of this guy's eyes. The light of God, the light of life, whatever you want to call it, right? And it's like it impressed my soul. I thought, I'm looking at the face of God. I'm looking at the eyes of God there, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, who else do you know of that has eye shine like that?
Yeah, I know exactly.
If people would just shift their idea that when you see that white light or that light blue light coming out of their eyes, and there's no flashlights or anything, it's just them, right? That's because that's actually how they go disappear. They fill their being up full of light, change the frequency, and it's just like you know, there's infrared you know, you can't see infrared with your naked eye, and all that is slower light. It's red in the red spectrum, and blue is a little bit faster. All they have to do is either speed up or slow down their light just a little bit, and they disappear.
We can't see them.
So, and that, in order to do that, when their whole being is full of light, you're talking about really, really high beings.
Yeah.
Yes, they're animals, and they kill deer, and they're doing all this kind of stuff, and they bluff charge, but they also have this ability to mind speak, open your heart, go invisible, come and visit you in your house. Do this kind of
exactly. And that's the duality of it, that we need to bring the flesh and blood people and the woo people. And the woo people know this stuff. You know? They're just waiting for the flesh and blood people to come and be like, with open arms, be like, we got you, you know, like, we don't hate you guys. Flesh and blood people love to mock the woo, but like, these things go together like peanut butter and jelly. And these guys, like, people have to understand this. So
peanut butter and jelly, you're right.
Yeah. And they do the thing with Audible too. Like, they can talk. This is why audio is such a thing to me. Like, I used to bring my recorder everywhere because they can speak to each other in an audible level that we can't hear, like on a range that's below our hearing spectrum. And when you listen back on your recordings, you're like, dude, they were talking to each other right there, and I didn't even hear it. So they do that, yeah, with their when they change their frequencies or their auric field where we can't see them. And they do the same thing with their speaking. So like I've heard them speak before where they're right on the level of me being able to hear it, and it will drop in and out of my hearing range. So there'll be like a sentence that will drop here in and out. So it's like a, and it's like right there. And it's the trippiest thing when you hear it, because yeah, they can do all those things. And the eye shine, man. So when I was in Georgia, I was introduced to Keith. It's amazing. The universe works in these ways, man. Like I was kind of pushed in a direction to watch. I don't know if you know like Alex Midnight Walker, or have you seen any of his stuff? Alex Munoz.
I don't know if I have or not. Is it paranormal?
He's from Georgia. Sorry?
Is it paranormal?
No, Sasquatch stuff. If you like look at Alex Midnight Walker, he has a lot of. He used to have like a blog talk show and some YouTube videos and stuff. He still does it now, but I was pushed. Like YouTube videos from him kept coming into my feed, and I was, So, anyways, I started paying attention to that stuff, and then I was introduced to Keith Bearden, and got his book. And found out he was like close to me. So I reached out to him, and I was like, a lot of the stuff you talk about in your book are things that I'm experiencing. And he was like, well, look, we're having this camp out. Would you like to come? And I was like, oh, absolutely. So I went to a camp out, and it was him and Arla and Gail and like Jason and John and like a bunch of people and Ginger. So I met all these people, and we started going to this place, and it was like instantly we're all on the same page, and that's just such a strong, powerful thing when you meet people and you're able to like talk about the stuff with people that totally understand what you're saying, because most people don't get it. But this place is like, man, the eye shine there. It's like it's fireworks. I mean, it's blown my mind so many times. And that white light you're speaking of, we've seen that from Keith's teacher, and he is a very large individual, but he he does that eye shine, and it is just like two headlights on high beam, and he does it from far away, and that's when you'll see him. I'm like jumping ahead of how we were introduced to this guy, but he does that. His eyes shine is bright white, and it's impressive. And I don't understand it. I kind of understand it, but like, I don't really know.
Well, now you know. I did meditation. Kriya Yoga, and I was initiated by a living perfect master at the time. And this guy wore a Krishna crown. That means he had the heavyweight title for the highest person on the planet. And that's what a true guru does. They connect you to the life force from the top of your head. Right. It's like, and they pour this energy inside you. And then if you meditate on that, eventually you get to see light. And that's what I used to do. And that's the beginning of it. And you can actually raise up to see that light. It takes years to do it, but you raise up, you can see that light, and your whole head gets full with light and all that kind of stuff. This is basically a God man. That's what it is. But you have to keep doing it. The people who are better at it than me, they can actually go the full tilt. But that's what it is. It's a divine light. That's what when Jesus said, when thine eyes become single, your whole being will be filled with light. Said that on the Sermon on the Mount. So it's the light of life. And what was the other? It was another quote. Oh, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And everything was created by the Word, something like that. And it said, that Word was made life, and that life is the light of mankind. Or the Word was made light, and that light is the life of mankind. So our life force itself is light. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's pretty much basic physics, what they're saying, but,
Yeah, and it's funny because you talk about that. When I mentioned that thing in 2012 where I felt what's felt like a fingertip right here in my crown chakra, where the energy was, I don't know if it was a finger actually touching me or if it was just the energy was just transferred directly to this spot, but you could feel right there. And for, man, 6 months to a year after that, almost nightly, I could feel it. And it felt like somebody had a string right here on my head, and it was like an antenna had come out, and I could feel it, and it was just connected to whatever the cloud, it was just
That's
connected to
creative.
that
That's
higher.
creative. You see, you were talking about Kundalini. Kundalini starts down in your pelvic and raised
Right.
up, right?
Hmm.
But
Right.
enlightenment comes to the top down. The
Yeah.
first guy I ever met who was enlightened. That was a funny story. I just met him in Coconut Grove, Florida. We're hanging out in the park, and I just started talking to him about stuff, and then I saw that there was something unique about the guy, but I didn't have a clue. And then he started telling me about how he became enlightened, and this light came down to the top of his head, and and then his whole, and it never went away. And that's what started me to say, oh, that's pretty cool. I want to go find some guru to do that for me too.
Right.
And but the effect of that was, the effect for me was, it blew out all the seals in my transmission of my car just from riding them around. That's how much spiritual pressure this guy had.
Yeah.
And I got it fixed for free, and that was pretty interesting. And then for 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, right? First day I went back to junior college, I could hear people talking from 2 miles away. 2 miles away. I could hear the people in the library reading their books, because you know how people read with their mind.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, when I would get close to my friends, within 3 or 4 feet of my friends, I could see their whole life go from birth to death in like this slideshow. I could see when they got ill. I could see when they got married. I could see their children. I could see where they died.
Wow.
Sasquatch can do this too.
Yeah.
Whenever you hear those stories about these guys that, oh, I was in my tent and the Sasquatch was walking around my tent, right?
Right.
What he's doing there is he's reading your whole life value. He's reading you from birth to death, and to see if you're the kind of guy he wants to have in his woods.
Right.
You know what I mean? They
Totally.
and so what can you say about people like that? That they can see your future, they can see your past, and I don't know. I get off
Yeah.
on this a little bit, but
No, I mean, I can go off on tangents all day, so I totally get it. But yeah, like the eye shine thing, it's I've seen it like a blue, seen green, and I've seen bright white, and I've seen red. And it's it's hard to understand at first, but when you see it, it's just mesmerizing. I mean, it's so cool, man, and I don't want people to write that off as not real, because, and I wish I could bring these like flesh and blood guys to this place and be like, there you go, like, how do you explain this? Because it either scare them to death, or it would like rock their world, because it's just no denying it when you see that. And it's like, best way I can explain to anyone is if I mean, it's definitely a light source coming from behind their eyes, because you can see the like the striations and everything, and like the pupils. So it's like almost like a marble. And if you shine a light behind a marble, and you can see like the swirl patterns, and it kind of sparkles a little bit almost, but then like a blue one and a green one and a red one, just one story. One night, I was out at this place with Ginger and Paul. And I'm not sure if you've met Ginger or not, but I'll introduce you to her after the show. She's in Georgia also. She's going to the spot, like my spots too, that I used to interact with. And like, she's going there now, and they're like, they love her. She's an awesome person. So they're interacting with her now. So she's kind of like, makes me so happy, because that they've connected with her. But we're walking through the woods one night, and this was probably like, I don't know, 11 or 12 at night, and we didn't have any lights. We're just walking on this trail, and we see blue eyes and green eyes, and they're one's a little bit lower behind a tree, and the other one's in the tree next to him. So it's blue eyes and green eyes. And we stop and we talk to them. We're like, hey guys, I'm so glad you guys came out. We're just talking to them, and they're just standing there looking at us, and then they'll look at each other, and then look back at us, and then in the distance I noticed like some red eyes, a little bit further away, like maybe like right on the top of the ridge line, just kind of like peeking over, and I got the feeling that that was a young one that was just a little nervous, wasn't quite sure what to make of us, and so we talk. I try to get them to come a little closer because we want to interact, and they didn't. And so we're like, okay, well, I'm so glad you guys came out. We're just gonna keep walking. So we go walk, and it's me and Ginger's in between me and Paul, and right between us, like right where Ginger's standing, was this loud. I mean, it was dark, like we could barely see where we were walking. It was just loud, like, pop. She was like, whoa. She was like, that blew my hair back. And I was like, what was it? She was like, I don't know. And Paul was like, well, did they throw something at us? And I'm like, I don't know. But then we kind of looked around, and there was like no tree near us, close enough to us to have it that close, And we were like, wow, that was intense, because it was just this loud boom. And like enough that it like blew her hair back, and it like, you could feel it. So 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in my living room, that same boom, right there next to me. My wife was in the other room. She's like, what was that? And I was like, I don't know, but it was the same exact noise. And I think they just, were showing me that they could kind of do that wherever, they don't really have to bang on a tree or, anything like that. Like they can do that noise wherever they want to. At least that's where I kind of got from that thing. And so that's just another like cool little story.
Well, we're coming up on an hour. You want to wrap it up, or you got more stuff?
I mean, I have more stuff, but we can wrap it up. It's we can do it another time. Just other things.
I like it. Yeah. Well, let's cut it here, because like I'm already an hour and a half into edits that I haven't even got to yet. So
yeah.
This was really, really, really fabulous. It was a gift for me to hear your story.
No, I'm so thankful that you reached out to me, because I feel like you're doing such a good service by doing what you're doing, because you're connecting everyone, and I think that we all have a role to play in this. I'm super thankful for your role in this, because like you're bringing everyone together, and it's awesome. And we definitely need more of this. So
that's one of the things I want to do. I want to get the spiritual people who that's the direction everything's going. You know what I mean? So I want to get those guys get their voice out there. So I think it's important. And just to balance out all the shoot them till they're dead, monkey only people.
Right. Totally. And also the people that want interactions and are open to what we're discussing, but they just don't know how to go about it, because there's a lot of those people out there.
And it's good to know you don't have to actually go in the woods. If you have a good intention, a good heart, they'll come to you.
They'll come to you for sure, especially if they're connected to people that are into this, because they'll kind of get their attention.
Friends of friends.
Totally. And to those people that want to go out and experience this stuff, and you're not afraid of it, or you want to go out into the woods, like the one thing I suggest to people, and this has taken me leaps and bounds ahead, is when you go out into the forest, just talk out loud. Just speak, like just vent, like you're talking to a psychiatrist, or a psychologist. Just ask questions, just talk like a crazy person, you know what I mean? Like you're talking to yourself. Just talk to the forest as if they're there listening to you. And that's when it will come to you.
I agree. I totally agree with that. And talk out loud or in your head. And the other thing I'll add a little spice on that: if you're going through troubles in your life, then go out and weep and wail and rage in the woods. Pour your energy out into the ground. You know what I mean? Because that's what monkeys do. We scream, right? Yep. That's what babies do. When we were the most alive is when we screamed and cried and raged. and
Yep.
whimpered, right?
Yep.
As soon as we stopped, we start dying. So if you've got problems, people get problems, go out in the woods and let it out.
Yeah,
You know what I
totally.
mean?
And when you start talking, I can't even tell you how many times this happened. I'll ask a question, and before I'm even finished asking the question, answers right there. You know what I mean? That it's like,
I do know what you mean. It's phenomenal.
yeah, it's amazing. So that's my suggestion, is just go out in the woods, talk. If you're having frustration, anxiety, take your shoes off, go out in the woods and scream. Just get it out. And then
And if you talk to them like they're real, they will become real.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just Sasquatch. I mean, there's other entities that are there. And you have to be cautious, you know, you can't just let anything in. Like you have to kind of know right from wrong, use free will, and you know, listen to the devil on your shoulder and the angel on your shoulder. Don't let everything in, you know. But if you're open to it and you let the fear go and you just let love in and accept it, they'll come to you. They'll gravitate to you because they love that. They want people to pay attention. So that's my suggestion to everyone.
Yeah, no, the first thing that they had me do before I even knew what Sasquatch was, they took me out of my dream and had me talk to a rock in my dream. And well, that, you know, it took me a couple of years to figure out what that was all about. But what it was all about was the most dense, unconscious thing you can think of is a rock. And here I was talking to a rock who called himself God, which I found out later in the Bible that God is being called a rock like 26 times. You know, God is my rock, and God is my foundation
Oh,
stone, and
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. But
Right.
anyway, so that's another kind of things that the Sasquatch want to lead us into. That is, we can have a relationship with the trees, with the birds, with the animals, with the rock, with the lake,
Totally.
the land, with the sky, with the, you know what I mean?
Right.
Just surprise, surprise. It's just like what the American Indians have been saying since we landed on this continent.
100%. Totally. Totally.
What a great talk. Thank you so much, Sam, maybe we'll do this again.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. But yeah, absolutely. Let's do this again.
All right, bye bye.
All right.